Well, Gabe, I don't know if you've noticed, but we have not had very good luck with co-hosts in the past couple of years.
Yep.
We first tried to bring on Chris, and he's great. He's one of our best
Love
friends.
Chris. Love him.
I love Chris to death. But he is super busy, and he
Yep.
comes on like once or twice a year. I always love seeing him. Those are always some of the best episodes when we get Chris on. But it's not he's not on
Sustainable.
enough. Yeah, sustainable. That's a great word.
Yeah.
So then we did a thing not too long ago, actually. Like, was it was probably about a year ago.
Yeah, a year, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah.
ago, something like that.
And yeah, we brought on Mick, and he was a friend that we met through Twitter, and he had come on a few episodes, and we had a great time chatting with him whenever he was on. And it got to be about Christmas time, not last year, but the year
Yeah.
before. And you and I were talking about how we would like to find a third co-host to become a regular part of the show.
Yeah.
And to kind of enjoy books with and stuff. And so we asked Mick, and he said yes, and that was great for a while. He had planned a Malazan read-along series that he was going to do on his own, and he was going to have his own guests on for that. And I think he did the first episode. He did the first one where he like talked about his love for Malazan and stuff. And that was great. And he came on for a few episodes, but then he kind of like disappeared. He had some personal stuff going on for a while at the end of last year.
Yeah.
But then when all that got over with, we thought that he was coming back. Like we thought that he was going to be more regular on the show.
Yeah.
And a few months ago, maybe like 3 or 4 months ago, we did our 100th episode live stream, which was very fun. We went for 5 hours.
Yeah.
That was crazy. And Mick came on for the first like maybe hour or two, or maybe the last
that's
hour
right.
or two.
That's right. Last time we've seen him.
Yeah, so that was the last time we saw him, and I'm just going to be honest with our audience and everybody. We have not heard from him since then.
Yeah.
I actually talked to somebody recently who said that they talked to him a couple weeks ago.
I was just gonna check my because I messaged him a while ago on WhatsApp. I don't know if it was prior, but it was a while ago. Oh yeah, no, 10/16/2023. So that was quite a while ago.
Yeah.
7 months ago.
Yeah. So, I'm not really sure what's going on with him. There's things that come up in life, right? Things happen, and it's the internet, and it's kind of hard to remember sometimes that we don't really know these people in person, and we don't know like what exactly is going on in their lives, and we just have to trust that something came up, and he had a reason for going his own way, or whatever he's doing right now. So we wish him the best. If he ever wants to come back, he's still a co-host as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But we have been kind of thinking about, okay, so what's next for the Fantasy Files? How do we grow this again? How do we get back on track? And we have a friend that has been with us since the beginning. She's been on a number of episodes. I think it started with the Night Angel trilogy, unless she was on something before that. I can't quite remember, but she's been on a lot of episodes, and you guys may have seen her recently on a significant amount of episodes here in 2024. She came on for Will of the Many, for the Lies of Locke Lamora episode, Empire of the Damned, Fourth Wing, and Harry Potter. So she's been on so many times this year, and we had a little chat the other day, and I would like to introduce everyone to our newest co-host, Sam.
Hi.
Welcome to the team, Sam.
Welcome.
So excited.
So we did the Harry Potter episode last week, and at the end of it, you had said to me, I've been on a lot. Have you guys ever considered like bringing me on as a co-host? And I was telling Gabe the other day that this was a complete shock to me. Like, I was not expecting it in the least. Otherwise, I would have offered you a co-host position a long time ago. Because, yeah, I think as, hosts of a podcast, it's hard to, when Gabe and I think about how much we put into the podcast and how much time it takes and how much it asks of us, it's really hard for us to ask that same thing of someone else. And so it's hard to ask people to be a co-host. It's actually asking quite a lot. And so, I was really happy when you said that, because it as soon as you said it, it made absolute sense. And I was like, why has this not been a thing this entire time? And it just all clicked as soon as you brought that up, and I'm like, that is a really, really good idea. So I'm glad you're on board. I'm glad that was something that you wanted to do, and that you took the pressure off of me.
Yeah, and kudos. That's the other thing. Kudos to you, Sam, for saying something.
Yeah.
You don't want to like overcommit to something you can't do, and I'm like mulling, doing like my own podcast type of thing, but like I like playing off of people, but I had the same concerns of like, there's nobody that I feel like I can ask, and I would be 100% sure that they'd be committed, and I wouldn't have to figure out something new in a few months. But we've been doing it for so long now, or I've been doing it for so long now.
For months and months and months.
And I'm like, I definitely think I have a grasp on what the commitment is, and it's really just like throwing in one recording like a week at the moment. Like I'm already reading that much anyway, and I love all the books that we've been reading. So
awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, and basically the deal that we had with Mick was like, basically, if you're gonna be a co-host, then just try to be on once a month. Like that's all we really care about. If you want to be on more than that, that's awesome too. And then of course, there's months where life happens and stuff comes up, and I think something we all need to remember sometimes is that the podcast is a hobby. It's not a job, right? And so I never want anybody to feel like it's a job, even though it can sometimes. I just want everybody to remember that if you ever need a week or a couple weeks or a month or whatever, then everybody should feel comfortable with letting each other know, because we don't want each other to burn out. We like doing the podcast, and we want everybody to have fun and not have like a total burnout. So let's get to know you a little bit. Let's introduce you to our audience a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what your favorite fantasy series are, or like why you love reading fantasy or sci-fi or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I got into it really late in life. I would say I was probably in my 20s when I really started reading fantasy, and it was from this guy who used to come to the bar I worked at all the time.
Oh.
And he was there so often that we realized we both love books, so he started being like, no, you have to read this, and he had impeccable taste in fantasy novels. And one of the first ones was Game of Thrones at the time, and I just had never read anything that was so beautifully written in a way where like I loved the characters so much more than I had in any of the superficial, teen novels I had been reading growing up. And that just jump-started it, especially Patrick Rothfuss, The Way of Kings. Not The Way of Kings, sorry, we were talking about that earlier. Kingkiller Chronicles. That one really sold me on, it opened so many doors for me, and it's basically all I've read since then. And I very rarely deviate from fantasy now. I mean, it's become a lifestyle.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it just sucks that the ones that got me into it are like unfinished series.
Right, I know.
Unfinished series are just tough, man. They're so fun at the beginning, then you get to that last book and you're like, oh man, this is gonna be painful.
Yeah. So it was new for me, but once I got into it, it's been the one constant in my life, I could say, for the longest time, is just my love of fantasy.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think fantasy above all other subgenres or genres is that it lets the author create a world rather than having to work within one, or work within like our own.
Yeah.
And so there's just so many possibilities. Like you can have a fantasy mystery, you can have a fantasy romance, you can have a fantasy western. Like it doesn't you know, it's all kind of encompassed by this umbrella of fantasy, and there's so many different ways that you can go about it as an author, and there's so many options for readers. It's awesome.
Yeah, I've always said that I love fantasy because anything can happen. Like somebody can die, and that doesn't mean they're really dead. And
Right.
That's just what I love. You can't rest on your laurels when reading a fantasy novel, because chances are they probably want you to think what you're thinking, knowing that they can then shock you later with a completely different, unexpected ending. I love it.
Exactly.
Right. So you said was it Game of Thrones and King Killer that first got you into fantasy?
Yeah, I think so.
What would you say some of your other favorites are?
Oh, I mean, The Will of the Many, even though it was recent, that was just one of the best books I've read in years. I really love Jay Kristoff's Empire of the Damned, that series so far. I can't wait to do the Sanderson Way of Kings, because that's one of my all-time favorite series. Oh, I mean...
She's like, look at my bookshelf. That should say everything it needs to.
Yeah, I read too much to even like try to like narrow
it down
past like what I've basically recently read.
Right.
It doesn't have to be me like physically reading something, but then I'll be like listening to a different audiobook, or it gets them all jumbled.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you have the perfect background for like BookTube podcast, don't you? Like,
my husband let me slowly take over our spare bed. No longer a bed in here, and my little library.
Nice.
That's so great.
It's getting full though. I really need to get some more.
You need a couple more shelves.
Yeah. Double stacked on both sides. It's a little out of control at the moment.
That's great.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing to have happen, Sam.
Right, yeah.
And bless my husband for tolerating it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I need to find a way to get my shelves like closer to me, because they're all the way across the room. And if you're standing like in front of them, it feels like a good amount of like shelf, but from all the way back there, it just looks like this little tiny sad shelf.
Instead of that, what you should do is you should turn that entire wall into a bookshelf and then fill it completely with books. Then it will look big.
Right. What I have been thinking is I want to add another shelf right there and put it so it at least goes to the door. And then I want to put a piece of artwork up here.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And another one like on
that wall.
On this wall over here. So at least it's not just like blank wall.
Yeah.
But I need to find some good fantasy artwork. So if anybody has any recommendations for good fantasy artwork or Etsy shops or anything.
TV ones downstairs, but the artists that we've bought from might have fantasy stuff. So I'll look and I'll send you the links, because downstairs we have like fan art essentially from Etsy of like Breaking Bad,
right?
The Sopranos, and Arrested Development. I think those are the 3 shows.
That's cool.
We did that where we like got the fan art of them, and they're really cool. I'll send you a link because I think there was like, do you like Zelda? There was definitely like a Zelda one, and
cool. Nice. That's awesome. So then last question for your introduction thing here. What do you love as far as like discussing fantasy? Like why do you enjoy like discussing fantasy, and what are you looking forward to doing on the podcast?
Well, if my husband was here, he would tell you I'm a chatterbox, and he doesn't read actually. So he's patient, and he'll just like nod his head when I'm like explaining things to him,
Sure.
But he's definitely not giving me any commentary back. I can't bounce ideas off of him, and I care so much about fantasy that like I need people to talk about what I've read.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
the fact that there are people out there who are able to write these books
Yeah.
and go through with it and get them published, and that we get them in our hands and we can read them and then have these discussions about them is just such a fascinating cycle in and of itself, you know. But once I really got into fantasy, I didn't have anyone in real life, so that's when I went on Twitter and found you guys. I mean, you know, talk about just meant to be. I feel like that I happened to get on Twitter one day and somehow found you guys, and look, here we are today. And
Right.
it wouldn't be possible without fantasy novels.
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
so it's just also fun to find other people that are willing to nerd out as much as
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Amen.
Fantasy has such a great community, and Gabe and I definitely didn't know what we were in for when we started this, and now we have so many friends through the fantasy community, like people that we consider like real, like genuine friends.
Mhm.
That we've like sent Christmas gifts to and stuff. Like, it's pretty wild. So, yeah, that's great. And then, is there any books or anything that you're looking forward to talking about on the podcast? Like anything that you would like to see us read, or see us all read that you've read that maybe we haven't read, or whatever?
I feel like I had something in my head earlier, and I'm totally blanking on it. Did we? I want to talk Farseer. I really want to talk Farseer.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
That's one I'm definitely looking for someone to talk about with, because as brutally sad as it is for almost like the whole series, the way Robin Hobb wrote these words and can make you feel like I've cried in each book of the series probably like 6 times throughout it, and yet I keep going back for rereads because you find new things each time. And I feel like you find that a lot in most fantasy novels, where you read it the first time and you're like, oh, that's good, and then on the second reread you're like, oh my god, now I'm noticing all the things once it's been explained to me on the last one, and that's really fun too.
Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah, I read the first one somewhat recently, and
you finish it?
Yeah.
Nice.
And I loved it, and I'm super eager to go on to the second one, but there just hasn't been time. They're big books, and so I'm definitely eager to get into the second one.
Yeah.
So I'll we'll have to do that at some point. I'll do a reread of the first book, and
and I think you'd like the Ninth House too, the Leigh Bardugo book. I think you'd like those.
That's one that I've been meaning to read. That's like the Dark Academia, right? Like
at
academy or university or whatever.
Yeah, it's at Yale, which is here in Connecticut.
Oh, okay, nice.
So that was fun too. But we were talking about it in a stream recently where you were like, oh, somebody said it's kind of like Hellbent, or Ninth House. Sorry, Hellbent's the second one. And I was like, no. And then I thought about it and I was like, wait, no. Yeah, it's kind of just like Ninth House. I forget which stream we did though. Maybe
was that on? I think that was Will of the Many.
Yeah. But I think you guys would like those. It's interesting enough.
Okay, it's like a mystery, right?
Yeah, and it's a little more. I don't want to say paranormal, but
yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to like say anything that would like ruin anything.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
But
it's got a paranormal bent to
it. Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think you'd enjoy it and be a little different from like the usual stuff you read.
Cool. All right. Well, everybody, please welcome Sam in the comments. Say hi to her. Say congrats. All the good stuff. She will be on for the remainder of Gentleman Bastard series. What else do we have coming up? She's going to be on for the Harry Potter books. She's reading those for the first time, so if you want to follow along on our Potter Watch episodes, she's a first-time reader, so that's really fun. And then, of course, she'll be with us for Stormlight. There's all sorts of good stuff coming up. that she'll be on. So, just welcome her. down in the comments. Shad
That
says,
says
welcome.
Sam.
Thanks, Chad.
So, all right, everybody. We'll see you later. Bye. And a big shout out to Caitlin. Thank you so much for backing us at the Green Bone tier.